It's the Badgers and Nyzier versus the NCAA. Who's going to win? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Harris. As always, really do appreciate you tuning in. Short episode today, but I wanted to talk about Nyzier Fourqurean, the lawsuit that he has filed with the help of Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, against the NCAA, trying to get another year of eligibility. I first kind of want to just lay out what the argument is from Nyzier's standpoint. And I apologize if my voice is a little up and down. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm feeling great. I'm not going to miss a rep. So the basis of the argument is in 2021. So there's a couple things here. In 2021, Nyzier played 11 games, but didn't play a lot of snaps. He was dealing with illness with his dad, who very, very tragically passed away. This was when he was at Division II. And if you look at the NCAA rule where you can play in 4 games, but not more than 4 games, right? You get 4 free games before the year counts. If you calculate the snaps he played in 2011, it's less than 4 games. So in a way, he meets that threshold if you look at it through a different lens. That's part of the argument here from Wisconsin's standpoint, from Nyzier's standpoint. So in that sense, it makes some sense. The other argument is other athletes, Diego Pavia, who, Vanderbilt quarterback, played at JUCO, has successfully argued that a JUCO shouldn't count because I can't make the same type of NIL money that I can make at the Division I level. Those JUCO years, and that's not his sole argument, but that Division II is very similar in that sense, right? You also can't make the same type of NIL revenue at the Division II level that you would at the Division I level. And then the other part of it is he hasn't played 5 years, right? A lot of players have played 5 years, 6 years. How many years has who's Utah's quarterback, Cam Rising, played? Like, some of these guys have played so many years of football that you start to look around and you start to wonder, well, does the NCAA really draw the line on anything? And if not, and I played 2 years at D2, one of which I didn't play that much. You can see the argument from Nyzier's standpoint. Excuse me. The other part of it is if you look at it, and the NCAA has talked about going to 5 years. You're going to have 5 years to play, 5 scholarship years to play. If that's the model they're going to, or Nyzier would still have eligibility in that sense there too. So that's kind of the argument. Other players have found situations where, because they played at JUCO at different levels, they've been able to get another year. One of my years, there should have been a hardship waiver applied, which Wisconsin did try to apply for on his behalf. That was that 2021 year at Grand Valley State, where he didn't play the totality of 4 games. So that's kind of the argument from Wisconsin and Nyzier's standpoint. I want to talk about the impact on the team. That's next. And then kind of what's the broader implication of this, and where are you guys at on it? So from a Wisconsin standpoint, if you're a fan of the Badgers, getting Nyzier back's a big deal. He was really good last year. Okay. I've argued, I thought he was the best cornerback the Badgers had last year. I think he was better than Rico last season. And I like Rico a lot. He was really solid. Third on the team in total defensive snaps. He played 652 snaps. Among cornerbacks, only Xavier Lucas had a higher pass coverage grade, and he did that in far less snaps. So you're talking about a guy who played a ton, played more snaps than Rico, was an Iron Man out there. Really, really physical tackler, good size, had that goal line interception against Oregon. One of the better coverage grades on the team. He had a 70.8 coverage grade per PFF. This is a rock solid performer for the Badgers at the cornerback spot, and a spot where they need more bodies, where they still need depth quite a bit. You get him back, and you suddenly pair him with Rico and those young guys we've talked about, plus a couple transfer guys. I don't even know if I'm that worried about corner anymore. I still think depth is a little light, but a 1-2 of Rico and Nyzier is really good. And then if you take it a step further, you remember year 1 in Wisconsin, he made a massive jump in his body, his skill, his ability from year 1 to year 2. I think there's another jump in him. I think there's more development that happens at a Big Ten school than a Division II school, just because there's better coaching, there's better resources, there's better strength conditioning. He could be another jump. If he makes a jump like he did from 23 to 24, from 24 to 25, if he makes another jump like that, that's a draftable cornerback. I think so. From a Badger standpoint, there is a big upside here if he's able to come back. So that's kind of the argument that's the Wisconsin standpoint of it. Big picture, what does it mean? Like, big picture, we get closer and closer with every one of these decisions. By the way, why is Wisconsin suddenly, it feels like we're the guinea pig for all of this stuff. And maybe that's because we're so focused on what we're doing, right? Where we're not seeing all the other kind of portal questions or legality issues at other schools. But you have the Xavier Lucas stuff. You have obviously now Nyzier suing the NCAA. It feels like we're kind of the guinea pig in the epicenter of a lot of this, because if this goes through, it's going to open the door for a lot of other players, just like the Xavier Lucas thing going through, opening the door for a lot of other players. I think, I got to be honest, I think originally when I first heard it, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I want players to be able to sue the NCAA to get more years. But then when you read through the details of what Nyzier is actually asking for and looking for, it feels like the NCAA has made exceptions for other players that are more egregious than this would be. And it gets to my other point of the NCAA is just all over the map with this. You have no idea with them. There's no consistency. There's no, when you think it's going to go a certain way, it doesn't. You think back to Potter coming over from Ohio State to Wisconsin on the basketball side, how ridiculously petty they were. And then you look at a guy like, I'm not going to even say any names, but other players getting 6-7 years to play football in college and getting waivers continually approved. There's just no rhyme or reason. So I have no idea what the NCAA is going to do, but it feels like this is a case Nyzier could win because other players have successfully lobbied for more time. But more importantly, because the NCAA has no clue what they're doing. They are an army in retreat. They've been routed at every stop. And when you get routed at every stop, then you start making handshake deals here and compromises here. And then new players can point to those compromises and said, well, you did that there. Now I should be able to get this here. What I'm saying is the NCAA just keeps giving up inches and inches and inches. And eventually they have no legs to stand on anymore. How can they sit here and say, no, Nyzier, you cannot have another year? But yeah, we gave Diego Pavia his 6th year because he played at JUCO. What? And COVID years don't count anymore. And JUCO years don't count anymore. But Nyzier, you can't have that year back. My point is they're not standing for anything. The old line, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. The NCAA is not standing for anything anymore. So I just don't know who they're going to say no to. Like, why would it randomly be Nyzier Fourqurean? Right? Like, I don't know. And because it's the NCAA, maybe it will be. I just have no idea what they're standing on. I'm going to be fascinated to see it. It's another domino in this chain of this thing needs to get looped back in. It just needs to get under control. I continue to think it's the Big Ten and the SEC that are going to have to get together and say, this is nonsense. We're going to put our heads together and come up with a system that makes sense. And you're either going to get in line or we're going to leave you behind because we're the power players at the table. We're Ford and Chevy. We're omelets and bacon, right? Like, we own the breakfast menu. Like, whatever it is, whatever analogy you want to go to, they're going to have to get together and figure this out because this thing just keeps getting walked back and back. And what happens in a couple of years when a guy who's played 5 years at Michigan says, I'm going to sue for another year because I want to? What are you going to say? What are you going to say, NCAA? I'm going to stay another year because if I leave, I'm not going to be able to make money because my money's dependent on my NIL and I'm not good enough to go to the league. So I'm going to sue for another year. Eventually, someone has to step in and put real rules and framework in place. But until we get there, we're going to keep having stuff like this. That's the macro. The micro is Nyzier Fourqurean is a hell of a cornerback and would really help the Badgers next year. And a really nice guy. I've had the chance to meet him. I met him in practice. Well-spoken, really good kid, humble. Played his ass off last year, got way better. I would love to have him back. It would make the defense better. Easily make the defense better. He'd be one of the leaders on the team. He'd be one of the veterans in the secondary. I think he was the best cornerback on the team last year. It's going to come down to the NCAA and like which side they flip the coin on, because that's basically how they decide nowadays. So wanted to talk about it. Curious where you guys are at on it. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in on Wisconsin. I got JB in the chat as always. We will talk later. Love you guys on Wisconsin.